Are you ready to turn your podcast idea into a reality? All you need is 7 days with my 7-day podcast launch challenge. In just 1 week, we'll go from overwhelm to launching with clarity, confidence, and a growth plan. Every day we tackle key tasks, helping you get it into a rhythm so that easily, weekly, you can put out a quality podcast in minimal time. Plus, you'll get personalized support and join a community to keep you on track. Are you ready to launch and start growing today?
Just wrote a book, Underwater, the World, Drowning in Addiction, and how it really stems from those childhood traumas, the way the world really sets us up and how everybody is really suffering from some addiction. We're seen very different. If you're a people pleaser or an overachiever, it's okay. That's an acceptable addiction. But if you had a problem with alcohol or drugs, it's totally different.
Has your life, your dreams been interrupted? Good news. It is possible to reinvent our lives. People are doing it every day, and some are brave enough to share the struggles, disappointments, and challenges. If you are looking for a new beginning, a do-over, or to rediscover your passion, maybe even find a new one, then grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Interrupted, Act 2, Reinventing Your Legacy, with your host, Coach Lori.
Andra Annette, 2 first names. She has so many things going on, but with Pounds to Go, nourishing wellness from within. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. I have been in healthcare 40 years, not always as a nurse or a holistic practitioner. I've worked in several different areas of health, and then I became a nurse. It's over 20 years ago. I had a lot of health issues myself, and I've always been very in tune with my body, animals. I was treating animals as young as 6 in the neighborhood, and I always had a sense almost when things were wrong in other people. So it was no accident that I wound up in the healthcare field. But I had so many of my own health issues, and they weren't being addressed. So it was through that work, that 15 years of really understanding and researching all the different areas of digestive and thyroid, the issues that I had, and of course weight loss, because I was in a body I wasn't really loving at a certain time too. It was through that work that I really decided to come forward and help, because a lot of people talk about weight loss, but a lot of people don't keep it off. I am that person who lost 160 pounds and kept it off over a decade. I came forward to help during COVID because people needed help. They needed someone to ask those questions to. I started helping people as Ask the Nurse, and a business just grew out of that. I wasn't intending on starting it as a business, but people started asking me for help in other areas. Pounds to Go is named after my journey, because every week I would tell myself 5 more pounds to go, just 5 more pounds to go. To look at 160 pounds seemed overwhelming. So I just broke it down in small steps for myself to make that possible.
All the things you touch on are so key right now. I mean, thyroid, leaky gut, these are all things that we are hearing so much about. And weight loss is just such an issue for so many people, and they've tried everything. And people will say, well, if you would just, but it's so much deeper than that. And it sounds like you had a turning point in your life where you sort of understood how all of this stuff with your gut works for your whole body.
Well, I've always understood the body. So the body wasn't the issue. It was the minds. Bring the minds and the body will follow. So I was raised, I don't want to say a dysfunctional home, but there was abuse and verbally and physical abuse. And I didn't feel like I really belonged in my family. That did cause problems in my relationships. And we hear stories about generational stories where we're told as children what happens in this house stays in this house. So I felt like sharing honestly, like I had something to hide, like something horrible was happening in my home. So it was hard for me to share with people when they were sharing and talking about things in their house because I wasn't allowed to. But I grew up with not the best self-esteem. So I always felt like no matter what I did wasn't enough. There were other siblings in the household and we were compared often. School came very easy for me and the others had to study. And rather than praise for the A's that I got, it was, well, this one has to study and you don't. I kind of internalized a lot of those things. And even though things were doing very well on the exterior, inside, I had that feeling like I wasn't enough. I really didn't have people to confide in and talk about. I had one friend that to this day, we're still best friends as children, and we had similar lives and family lives. So we confided in everything. But the only other person I really had was my sister. She was the more of a mother to me than my mother actually was. She raised me. Most of who I am today comes from her belief in me and telling me that I could do anything. I mean, I went to college. I did all the right things. I was the only one in my family that did any of those things. I just always felt like something was missing, like it was never going to be enough. On the exterior, I seemed very happy. I had a good marriage. This was my second marriage. My first marriage was very abusive because I felt like that's all I deserved. Because if my family couldn't do that to me, then why not my relationships? I kept attracting those same type of people into my life. And it was a perpetual cycle. And when my sister died, it really brought me to my knees. It must be 2 years after that I was still calling her number, expecting her to pick up because we spoke 6 or 7 times a day. We were so close. She was the oldest and I was the baby, but she was really everything to me. And it was really hard for me to go on for that. And I didn't really grieve. I didn't allow myself to grieve. I mean, I cried, I did all those things, but I didn't really acknowledge and let myself go through the stages. I threw myself into work. I went to work. I cared for other people all day. I stayed busy, but I didn't sit with my feelings and allow myself to work through that process. So that was a really big interruption for me because all of the things that had been happening in my body, I had always controlled my whole life before I was in nursing, before I did nutrition, because nutrition is part of nursing, even though I did different coursework in nutrition. I did the master's in nutrition. That's part of nursing. They go hand in hand. I had always managed them independently to keep my thyroid at bay, to the digestive issues I had, the autoimmune. They were never diagnosed till much later on. Everybody kept telling me I was normal. That kind of perpetuated more lack of belief in myself because here I was, when I was in health, I was still getting those same answers. And I said, I don't understand how I could be so wrong about what's going on in my body. I know what I feel. And they keep telling me I'm normal, but I did not feel normal. And after my sister died, you can see like a transition. Like if you look at pictures of me in that time, that I went from a size 2 to a size 16, 18, I believe at one point. Nobody ever asked me, and I was in healthcare, are you okay? I mean, you could clearly see I wasn't the same person. And I didn't get those diagnoses until I went to a doctor who had worked with me for about 14 years, 10 to 14 years. And he said to me, if you think something's medically wrong, then I know it is. Because anytime anything had ever happened, I would tell him this was wrong with a patient. He said, where do you even come up with these things? And they were always right. And he would say, I don't understand how you know. I said, I don't know either. I just feel this sense. And I look in areas where most people wouldn't. He told me that everything I thought I had was correct. Did have the leaky gut. My thyroid was at coma levels. Despite the autoimmune I had 4 others. It was just finding my way back. I think the turning point for me was because I did those Jenny Craig's and all those things, and I just got progressively sicker. They don't work. They set you up for a perpetual cycle of lose and gain because they're not geared towards sustainability. They're geared towards temporary fixes. My mother said to me, and my mother was still alive, she would die not too far after my sister died. And she told me, you're the smartest person I know. And my mother had never given me that before. Never just heard her speak so highly of me. And she said, and if there's something wrong, then you'll figure it out. But stop asking everybody else. I kind of matter-of-factly said to myself, that's right, I'm a nurse, I know this. It sounds silly now, but it shifted my belief in what I was capable of. I started looking for the answers in my health just like I would for those patients. And even though I didn't believe that I was worth the results I was after at that point, because the mind, it's so hard to undo the damage that's done in your mind, and it's a constant retraining where you have to kind of give yourself those positive affirmations. So the things that you see me putting out there every day are messages to myself as well as to the world, because I know the difference that they've made in my life, in my self-esteem, how they made me believe that I could achieve anything. One of my favorite books, Lori, is by Shad Helmstetter, The Things We Say When We Talk to Ourselves. I was reading that book. Now, I had met Shad Helmstetter through organization I used to work with. He was one of the speakers. That was years ago. That was a book that we read with that organization because, of course, he was our speaker, but it just stuck with me. I started remembering what he had said, and like, you can rewire your brain and stuff. And I started doing those things. I listened to positive affirmations with Mary Morrissey. I worked with her in a program, just working on the mind and getting myself to retrain it. Every day, no matter how I felt when I woke up, I would tell myself, today is going to be a really great day. And I looked for something great in every day before I went to sleep. I looked at the bad. Okay, this didn't go so well. This was really good. How can we make more of the good happen? I would reflect on the bad and see where my part in it was and how I could really change that just by how I reacted to things. I started writing messages to myself on the mirror, and just telling myself 5 more pounds to go. I started writing, journaling what I wanted, doing these audio tapes that I would listen to. I do them for my clients today. They're weight loss affirmations, but with a story, whether eating out or eating in. I always enjoy eating less. Like, all the issues that I was struggling with, I reworded them because I was a big emotional eater. We're taught to be emotional eaters. So it was just really about changing my mind, and the body followed. Because when you feel good, you do make better choices for yourself. And I had made a lot of bad choices, but I also had the medical knowledge to know when I was reading things, if they were correct or not. Nurses base everything on evidence-based practice. So I would look for the best evidence and really try it and test it. I found my answers. When I looked back at my life, I always had digestive issues, always, since I was very, very young. But my mother was a single mother who raised 4 girls on her own. So we did all of the cooking, and we didn't eat well. Honestly, we were a hot dog and hamburger kind of kid. Pizzas, all that stuff, that's not good for you. So I had really bad digestive issues as a kid. I had hormonal disorders, part of the bad digestion. And I've always had a thyroid issue, ever since I was a child. I used to have hyperthyroidism. I had Graves' disease, and now I have Hashimoto's. It was just about looking back at which happened first, and then I saw that they were always there together. So it was really hard to decipher which one came down first. And I said, well, then I'll just repair them both at the same time. But it was a process of really tuning in to who you are, what you want, and what's going on in your body. Understanding that the mental, the physical, the emotional. When my sister died, I was emotionally broke. I was spiritually unfit. I was so angry at God for taking her from me. And I had such a close relationship with God. I always did. He's always been a part of my life. And I stopped talking to him. I took off my cross that I had. I still have the same cross since confirmation. I took it off. I wouldn't talk to him. How could you do this to me? I remember looking for that cross, like finding it in a jewelry box that reminded me of my sister. Went and I put it back on, and something just shifted in me. When I put it on, it was like he was telling me it's about time. But I had been just through so many traumas in my life. And I used to talk to God about that. Like, it can't get any worse. And it was almost like he would reach his hand down and say, oh, yeah, watch this, because this is coming. I broke my spine. They told me I would never walk again. I did. I walked that year. But I was just so relieved. And I was very young. I got hit by a drunk driver. And I was so relieved that that was happening. And I finally felt like things in my life were starting to go better. And then I got a diagnosis of cancer. And I said, oh no. And all I ever wanted to be was a mom. And I knew that this might change those outcomes too. But my whole life kept perpetuating like that. I was seeing the bad that happens and not realizing the good that it was taking me to, and how it was building character and making me the person that I am now. I would never take back any of those things. I know that some people would say if I could do it again. I struggled with alcohol. I just wrote a book, Underwater: The World, Drowning in Addiction, and how it really stems from those childhood traumas, the way the world really sets us up, and how everybody is really suffering from some addiction. We're seen very different. If you're a people pleaser or an overachiever, it's okay. That's an acceptable addiction. But if you had a problem with alcohol or drugs, it's totally different. I think that we need to make that shift and teach people to recognize that we're born whole, that we don't have to keep looking outside of ourselves to become. We already are who we are. It's just about bringing ourselves to the next place. We're here to learn and grow into why we're here. And I don't think a lot of people see that. I don't think a lot of people will be happy with my book, but I've been publishing like a crazy fool because I always wanted to be a writer when I was a kid, and I was told it's not a real career, that you can't do that. So get a real job. Now I can, because I have a real job and I can do whatever I want. 58 years old. I don't really look for outside validation. I am who I am. I show up as myself, and whoever doesn't like it, that's on them. That's not on me. I can only control what's going on in my body. I have no control over other people's feelings or reactions to me. But I'm going to live as fully as I can for whatever time I have left.
I love how you've taken the things you've struggled with and turned them into a business, a book. I know you have YouTube channels. You do weekly videos. How can people find you?
I am literally everywhere. I really am. I am on YouTube. I am on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Beacon Acid, Rumble, Pinterest. Andra Annette on TikTok. Instagram, I have two. I have one from when I was younger, so that's my name. The other one's Coach Pro 50. Facebook is my name, Andra Annette. When anybody Googles my name, everything where I am and what I'm doing comes up. The Chronicles of Courage, I usually share the links to those shows. They can find me at Strim TV, Andra Annette. But I'm just trying to put more good out in the world. I think that when you turn on the TV today and you listen to the news, it's very depressing. And then you turn on social media and you see who's doing really well and who's not. And it does something to people. A lot of people feel like they're failing if they're not at a certain place in their life. I was born poor. I had nothing, and nobody gave me anything, Lori. Anything I wanted, I worked for. Is my business exactly where I want it to be? Absolutely not. I want to be so much bigger. I want to be the Tony Robbins of healthcare. So I want to be in everybody's household, giving that health advice. And I give a lot of free stuff away out here because I don't think that health should be at such a cost. I think that's something that we should have. And most of my work is mindset. A lot of it is that abuse, those traumas, that lack of self-belief. I try to get people to look at the areas of their life where they're really succeeding and say, well, you are a great mom. You have a great job. You have a great marriage. So you have achieved all these wonderful things already. What makes you think you can't achieve this too? They get that little shift. And we start digging deep and finding out what the real issue, because anything that's going on in our body started in our minds with our thoughts about who we are, what we could achieve, and what our value is. We get busy, we get away from things that are important to us. I can still remember looking at that mirror that day and asking myself, where did you go? Hating the me that was looking back, really having no idea what made me happy at that stage of my life and what I wanted to really be. People said, what do you mean? You have a career and you have all this stuff. I said, yeah, but what else do I want? Because I don't spend my whole life at work, but truth be told, I really do. I spend my life because I'm still an active nurse. I wouldn't give that up until they wheel me out in the chair and tell me, okay, that's enough. You can't
You're
work
done.
today. Yeah. I love what I do. I love the people that I meet. I do a lot of community work with children, underprivileged children. I just love what I do. My website is Pounds to Go. They can find me there.
What I love about what you were talking about is that you try to go the conventional ways, the different programs, and you recognize that it's more of the inner part of us. And I work with people in recovery, and I often find they'll get clean and sober, but they haven't still accessed that childhood pain. You've heard of ACEs, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really like to talk about it because I feel like many people don't understand that it's could very possibly be childhood trauma that's keeping them stuck or is keeping them thinking, we call it trash thoughts. They've got a thought in their head. This is the way things work, but it's not a true thought. But as we get well and get healed, then we can also heal our thoughts, which then we can heal our body. So the work that you do, I think that's what really drew me to you as I followed you and watched you, is so powerful because I've always believed your mind can change your brain. Our brain just does whatever, but our mind directs it. And if our mind is not thinking healthy thoughts, the brain's going to go right along with it. And so I love your approach and how you break things down to, I always say, reduce it to the ridiculous, 5 pounds to go, 5 pounds to go. So I really hope that somebody would want to work with you, want to sign up with you. But before we go, what I really want to know is, because you've had so many things, like just in the stories, and I'm sure that there's so many things you haven't told us. What is it that you really want us to know?
I want you to know that if you believe in yourself and the value of who you are, that there is nothing in this world that you can't achieve. Create yourself a plan and start working that plan. You can achieve anything. When I set out on this journey online and the books, I was in a place where I said, can I really do this? And every time, so, a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome. And all imposter syndrome really is dealing with something new. And we all have it. Some people will say they don't, but we all have it. When we go for that first job interview and we got to talk about ourselves, we're not used to talking about ourselves. So it's uncomfortable. So that's what imposter syndrome really is. It's that uncomfortability with the new. But once you're in it and you start doing it, it gets easier and easier. And you just keep working those steps. You can achieve everything in your life. But you do need to believe in yourself. You do need to believe that you are worth the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, that you're worth a better life, a better job, a better marriage, better health. You need to know that you're born for something more. No, we're not born to work ourselves to death and live like ridiculously poor and never have. This world has so much to offer us, and there's so much abundance of everything. So it's not about there's not enough people online or there's not enough good health out there, because you have to find whatever approach works for you. I used to have a lot of programs on my website. I took them all down. I knew that they would help really anybody because they were all working with digestive health that is connected to the brain. It works through the vagus nerve, but even if you sever that vagus nerve, that gut keeps working, still takes care of everything. You actually have those two brains functioning for you all the time. I really design a new program for every single client based on where they are. And I ask them very specific questions, and that kind of leads me to where their problem is exactly, whether it's in the minds, in their belief, or if they have a real ailment underneath that we need to get to. And I see remarkable things happen. Someone just gave me a review on my website that she hasn't been in this body since 1989. And she's always had weight issues. She only has 14 more pounds to go. And I said, and you'll get there. I love to hear that. I love to see people come in not believing in themselves and walk out knowing that anything is possible because they've achieved what they want to.
And I think sometimes women, we get to a certain age and we just go, this is the way it is, or we give up. And I'm always that cheerleader for no matter how old you are, you can always make a change, start something new. It's really never too late. People will say, well, what if I want to be a high school cheerleader? It's like those things you can't, but you might find a granny cheerleader squad. We can, if there's something we really desire. And often something we desire is so masked that when we begin to uncover, we find it's encouraging our neighbors. That's what that cheerleader thing is. Or I just love women that are older that are doing new and amazing things, because it just shows me we just keep living. We just get to keep living and trying new things.
We only have so much time here in this world. You may as well make the most of it. And when we live in fear, we're those people that look back on our lives and say, I wish I would have. I see a lot of people in healthcare on those last moments, and none of them say to me, I've done everything I've ever wanted to do in my life. When they're self-actualizing, even if they're not on their deathbed, if they're talking in general and they say, I wish I would have done more of this. I wish I would have done more of that. And you tell them, well, what's stopping you? I think it's harder to get to a place in your life where you're looking at what if only I had. Win, lose, or draw. Go for it.
I love that.
Worst comes to worst, you get better at it. I had other people publish my first 2 books that went to bestseller. Now I'm publishing my own. I published 16 books in the last year. Just writing about some of the stories we're discussing here, and kids' books. I love writing kids' books. I loved getting lost in a story when I was younger. So if I can create that and have some education in there. So I did one on stranger danger because I think it was a nice way to have that conversation with our child, with everything that's going on in the world, how to be safe and make intelligent choices. And when you're in those situations, I did one on friendships and the value of honesty and trust in those relationships. And I did another one on owning your own unique qualities, because the Rocky finds his roar. He didn't believe that he had any gifts, because he didn't have the same gifts as everybody else. And at the end, he realizes that his gifts are different, but it still has value. He's happy. That's what life's all about. Finding your gifts and putting them out in the world, helping one another, pulling each other up, and helping each other through the good and the hard. Anybody can be there when it's good, but you need people to be there for the hard. So you need that support, and not having that when I was younger only makes me want to have that more now.
Thank you so much. You have given us so many bits of wisdom. And Andra Annette, and you can find her online pretty much anywhere if you'd like to work with her. Pounds to Go is her website. And thank you so much. And thank you for giving back. I see all the volunteer things you do, all the ways that you give back, all the free stuff you have available. And thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me.
If you love this podcast, here's a big ask. Will you share with your friends and family, subscribe, give us a review, and a 5-star rating so that others looking to reinvent their lives will be able to get the help they're looking for? Thank you in advance.